Greg Kelly. The latest breaking news and opinions. Entertaining and informative.
You know, talking to that guy who had all that stuff to say about Governor McGreevey, former Governor McGreevey, and he's talking about newspaper headlines from a long time ago, and I suggested, read the book, man, read the book. I know all those headlines, so do you. I decided to read his book. I love actually reading books. You know, everybody is just kind of skimming around on their phone. You know how few people actually take the time to read either a book or the actual document, the opinion from the Supreme Court or the legislation or whatever. You spend a little bit of time doing that, you will be smarter and better informed than anyone, and I mean anyone in the fake news. Any of them. They don't have the time, they don't have the inclination, they don't have the curiosity. They want it as easy as possible. They want some campaign to email them a clip and then they'll post it, and that's it. That's it. They just look at their inbox and they screw around and they gossip. You spend a little bit of time reading this stuff, you will be smarter than anyone in the fake news. I highly, highly recommend it. Hey, the other thing, there's actually one book. Well, I must admit, I never made it through the entire book, but there was one little gem, and I've shared it with you before, but there's a guy named Jordan Peterson, a professor of psychology out of Canada, and he's become this international sensation. He's not politically correct. He's incredibly smart. I guess he first rose to prominence when Canada had this law that you must use the transgender pronouns. You have to use those pronouns. You had no choice. And he refused. He absolutely refused. And, you know, the more he spoke about it, I'm like, you know what? He's absolutely right. The government can't force you to speak in a certain way. Well, but wait a second. Trans people would be offended. So, you know, I mean, offense. You don't want to be offended, stay home. And then they were trying to say, well, that's encouraging violence. No, it's not encouraging violence. And Dr. Peterson was happy to call transgenders whatever the hell they want to be called, but didn't want to be compelled to do so by the state. And I thought that was remarkable. Hey, and also, I'll just point out, you know, this whole thing about transphobia. They accused Senator Hawley this week of being transphobic. Do we have that clip, by the way? Let's revamp that. It was really interesting, but he was stumped. She said, Senator Hawley, do you think men can have children? And he said, no. And she said, well, that means you're transphobic. And that means you're encouraging violence against trans people. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, a woman who transitions to a man can actually have children. Are you kidding me? Are you crazy? Let me get this straight. A woman who transitions to a man is going to have her breasts removed. They do that. I actually know somebody who did this. At the age of 50, they decided to become a man and had their breasts removed. You know, and my heart broke. There are women out there, you know, breast cancer, who have to have them removed against their will. And because it's cool right now, because this is a way to get on the LGBTQ spectrum, this is a way that you can be celebrated by the woke left or whatever. So this person had their breasts removed and a couple of other things done, I assume, to become a man. All that to say, I don't have transphobia, but I will say this, I am very awkward around trans people. I feel awkward. I certainly do. And you do too. Absolutely. Especially how sensitive they are. Oh my God. If you don't say exactly what they want to hear, and by they, I mean plural, they, not their preferred pronoun they in the typical sense, you're in trouble. I do feel awkward. I don't understand it. And especially when it's like, well, what are you exactly? I mean, I think that. I know not to say that. Are you, and by the way, do you think, oh, jeez. And I see it all the time now. You see it all the time. And it's a sickness. It literally is a psychiatric illness. And it's being encouraged. It's like telling anorexic girls, oh, you think you're fat? You're right. Why don't we help you lose a little bit more weight? That's what society is doing to people who think they might have or who might have some gender confusion, dysphoria, right? Oh, you have a little confusion. Let's castrate you. Let's take off your breasts forever. It's really crazy stuff. Hey, I got to say something to the nurse from a little while ago, Pamela. No disrespect when I said I faked illnesses in school. I did do that a lot, actually. And the school nurse could figure it out and usually sent me back to class. But there is one thing. I gamed the system this way. Do you remember when they would check for lice? Do they still do that? They still do that in school where they take the tongue depressors and they go through your hair to look for lice? I think it's a state-mandated test. You ever notice anything about that? It feels great. It's like a little it's a little scalp massage. I was 9 years old. I was in heaven. This beautiful nurse is, with the tongue depressors for 5 minutes looking for, oh, please. And so what I would do is I'd go to the teacher. I said, I just found a very strange bug in my hair. They'd send me to the nurse's office right away, and that meant 10 minutes of heaven, 10 minutes of a beautiful head massage. I was totally faking it. I never found any bugs in my hair. I was really kind of crazy about washing my hair. Remember how popular and big shampoo was? Who remember? All right, never mind. That's something else. Let's see. Oh, I think we're going to have to get very acquainted with Gavin Newsom because I think he's probably going to be the nominee in 2024. Joe Biden, we know, is out. Now, who's it going to be? Who comes to mind? Who could do it? Who ran the last? It can't be Kamala. We know that. Who else is there in the Democrat? I mean, Hillary. Hillary's going to look into it, but sorry, way too much baggage. Most Democrats can't stand her. That's not happening. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not 1,000% certain, but I'm pretty sure. Buttigieg, I think he's going to have the same problem in South Carolina that he had the last time, if you know what I mean, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, I actually mean that large segments of the black community are not comfortable with a gay white man. I'm sorry, but that's true. We have the polls to back it up. And you could look at his success in Iowa, Pete Buttigieg, and you can look at what happened to him in South Carolina, and that is a reasonable person's takeaway. So I know there are a couple of other people. Michael Bennett from Colorado. Who cares? No, it's not going to be. Probably going to be Gavin Newsom, who's been in politics since the age of 19. He's a rich kid, I think. He was in the wine business. He's just like a layabout. Good-looking guy, tall. And I gotta give him some credit. He dreamed of being governor. He dreamed of making a splash in politics, and he did. But like most politicians, he is the proverbial empty suit. I find that, I tweeted a couple of weeks ago a story about just a picture of Joe Biden from back in the day, and I put one word up there, or two words, empty suit. And it did very well. It got like 10,000 likes and all kinds of comments because empty suit is not a term you hear anymore. You heard it a lot in the 80s and 90s. You don't hear it as much anymore. Empty suit to me is a kind of a shallow, vacuous executive who's faking it. And that's just 99% of all politicians. They know how to smile. They know how to ask you for money. They know how to pretend to look like they know what's going on, but they don't. I found this great article about the empty suit. It's in the Business Journal. It's from a couple of years ago, but it still applies. Listen to this. When interviewing to fill an executive position, beware of false confidence. The executive interview process places a huge premium on executive presence. People look for gravitas, charisma, and people who are comfortable in their own skin. Interviewers like the sound of a crisp, confident, polished answer to a question. So when someone looks the part and speaks confidently, you enter a dangerous part of the interview where you might let your guard down and start asking the candidate his philosophy on managing or what he thinks of your company's strategy. Empty suits ace most interview questions. They know how to work a conference room. Their answers are always smooth and polished because they built their entire career by knowing exactly the right words or kinds of words to inspire confidence and taking credit for the work of others. They know the right buzzwords and how to speak at length while committing to very little. But like a con artist, that's all they have. There is nothing behind an empty suit's rhetoric. Now, effective executives are different. They pay less attention to appearances. They don't spend their time polishing answers to philosophical questions. Some of their interview answers can sound a bit less confident than the empty suit because their answers rely on precision and nuance. Excuse me. Isn't this brilliant? I love this. Excuse me. They built their career driving results and being accountable for outcomes, meaning these are the effective executives, by the way. They built their careers on driving results and being accountable for outcomes, meaning they have made lots of mistakes and learned some hard lessons along the way. The least competent people, the empty suits, spend their energy avoiding accountability and therefore can't learn from mistakes, so they don't admit to. Because they never admit to mistakes, they overestimate their abilities. But effective executives feel responsible for outcomes, including mistakes they did not personally make. So their learning curve is dramatically accelerated. Consequently, they realize how much there is to learn, and they underestimate how talented they are. So how can you tell whether you are interviewing an empty suit or an effective executive? The real value in behavioral interviewing is in the follow-up question. Anyone can answer, "Tell me about your greatest achievement," but you find the real gold by effectively following up on their answer. 1, how did you achieve that? 2, what was your role on the team? 3, what decisions did you make in the face of uncertainty? 4, what mistakes did you make and what did you learn from them? 5, how did you measure your success? You will immediately see that effective executives are much more concrete and thoughtful in their answers. Their heads are full of the metrics they use to measure their progress. They give ample credit to their team and often sound quite humble about their own role. But when the buzz saw of follow-up questions arrives, the empty suits lose all their false confidence. It's almost painful to watch a succession of admissions that they do not really know how any of the results were achieved in their organization. Fascinating. Fascinating. And you know what's fascinating when you think about it? Joe Biden does not sit for interviews. He does those phony press conferences. And what do those press conferences lack? Follow-up questions. Follow-up questions. Oh, gosh, I'd love to do that. Oh, I'd love to interview him. Thank you. Thank you to this writer. Who the hell wrote that? That's very smart. Who wrote this? Some guy named Bob Corlett. Bob, Corlett. Got to find him on Twitter. If you know him, tell him I said, well done, and give me a moment. Your calls when I come back.
Greg Kelly.